here's Brody Brazil.
You know, in my watching of other videos and channels here on YouTube, I've noticed a trend lately. Content creators are complaining that sports leagues are going after their videos for copyright infringement, whether it's demonetization or a strike against their channel. What's going on here is that these creators are using actual game footage, which is copyrighted, but was being allowed to be used for quite some time. But it seems like respective leagues and teams are clamping down. They're cracking down on this. And now the creators are kind of upset because the rules have changed and their situation has changed and what they can do feels limited, or at least they don't want to do work if it's not able to be monetized. Let me try and just see the entire bigger picture here of how it works. Sports leagues and its partners, respective teams, they own the rights to footage. The game broadcast is owned by the teams and the leagues. Essentially, you can't just take whatever you want, repost it, put it back up, and try and monetize that. Why would that be allowed? There are partners of the league, broadcast partners, streaming partners, and they're the ones that pay for the rights to publish and disseminate these broadcasts. They don't want you doing that. So the leagues and the teams and their partners, in different ways, they own the rights to the footage. But highlights and full game broadcasts here in 2025, they are easier than ever to lift and to edit. What do I mean by that? It's easy for anybody to get this video now and republish it back on their own channel, make it part of their own video. And there is something called fair use, which I will explain a little bit later on in the video. We'll save that for later. But for now, just know that technically it's so easy to do. This is not like the 80s and 90s. When I was making videos as a kid, you had to record it on VHS and then you had to copy and paste. No, it doesn't work that way. No dubbing, no editing, none of that. Well, there is editing, but it's simple to get the footage. It's very easy to edit in your own video. The content, to me, is clearly better when you're actually using game footage. You're talking about things that you're showing at the very same time. Something I don't do here on this channel. More on that in just a second. I'll explain my approach and my advice for content creators by the end of this video. But yeah, content is typically better. That's why they're using game footage, game highlights, because they want to showcase the best of what's going on. They want to make their points come across strong. Problem is, YouTube has an excellent detection system when it comes to copyrighted video. This video could be tilted, it could be filtered, it could be disguised and masked, and somehow YouTube still knows, hey, that's copyrighted video, Brazil, that you're trying to use. This video is going to be demonetized, or your channel is going to face some punishment. Like, YouTube instantly can come right back at you if there's a claim that's placed on your video. Let me first take this from the league's view and the corporate side of this. You understand that I'm not a corporation. I have worked for these corporations. I've been around this stuff. I understand it. Let me try and explain what I think is what the league sees here. They see very popular YouTube channels and channels with tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of subscribers, you name it, getting 6- and 7-figure views. Like 250,000 views, 1.2 million views on a really good video by a creator that, used copyright footage. Now, if that creator used no footage, what can the league say? Right? Not much. But in this case, when you use footage, the league is like, wait, we hold the rights to this. Here's somebody taking our footage, making their videos popular for it. And the leagues, to some degree, they want to gain every last benefit from ownership, which they rightfully own the content, right? This would be like if somebody took your gardening tools and then went out and made their garden great and gave it back to you and they didn't even ask. And you're like, wait a second, you can't use my stuff. And then you competed your garden against my garden. Does that make sense? Maybe a good analogy, maybe a bad one, but that's kind of how the leagues see this. And it's not hard for the leagues to go out and fix this problem, whether it's the NFL, NHL, Major League Baseball, or I think the NBA is pretty relaxed on all this stuff. I don't see them going after anybody at any time. I feel like NBA footage is just kind of a free-for-all, but every other of the major 4 pro sports leagues in North America, the 3 other ones, they've kind of gone after people at certain times. But it's not hard to fix this problem. You go right to YouTube, you file a claim, that video instantly gets penalized and looked at. And I can say this from my own experience, and it actually had nothing to do with YouTube. This was back in the Twitter days, and maybe it was the transition from Vine to actual Twitter videos. But I used to post Major League Baseball footage because nobody said otherwise, like you couldn't. It was kind of primitive back then, 2012, 13, 14. I was covering the Oakland A's, and when they would do something, like they had great seasons in 12 and 13 and 14, when something noteworthy happened, and maybe a couple times a game, I would take that clip, I would save the video as a file, I would upload it to Twitter, add my own comment and caption, and there you go. And those videos became very popular, widely shared. Well, I had a bigger social following and profile than most, and so MLB caught wind of what I was doing, and somehow it got run up the chain and then came over to my employer. NBC got a letter, whatever we were called back then, got a letter from Major League Baseball. Hey, this guy needs to stop. Like yesterday needs to stop. I had no choice but to stop. I had baseball asking me to stop, my employer asking me to stop. I didn't need to be doing all this, but I felt like it was a good service for fans who may not be watching. Look, the bottom line is I wanted you to say, oh, the A's game is on. I got to be watching the A's game. This is happening. I want to check this out. I was trying to get more people to watch the games, but they didn't see it that way, so I stopped. Now, what kind of frustrated me is I stopped ever posting baseball video. Hockey video was different back then. They didn't seem to mind. But baseball video through 2015, 16, 17, smaller accounts, people that didn't have as many followers, they could continue posting. And I watched them do it. And I said, well, what? How could you do this and not get in trouble, but I could? Or how could I not do this and you be allowed to? It's who they have their eyes on. It's as simple as that. And I realized for me, like to go through the hassle of back and forth, and it didn't escalate, but imagine if it did escalate. Imagine if there were lawyers involved, and you know how messy this can get. I realized it was not worth it to jeopardize my Twitter account back then, let alone YouTube content creation here and the AdSense program, and people like have their livelihoods on YouTube. It is not worth it to risk your channel because you want to spice it up with cool video. Now, I mentioned fair use earlier. This is the number one reason why a lot of people say, hey, wait a second. Why can't we use this footage? The definition of fair use is this: a legal doctrine that allows the use of copyrighted material. Yes, it is copyrighted by the respective leagues, but use of copyrighted material under certain circumstances. There's a couple examples of fair use, and there is some gray area here, but generally speaking, teaching, criticism, parody, or review. A lot of these content creators, they're not just reposting the highlights and saying, ooh, watch this. They're using the highlights to explain something, to teach something, maybe to criticize. Occasionally it's parody, and yes, sometimes it's just to review the week that was across the NFL or Major League Baseball or whatever. And there are some factors that weigh in favor of fair use. If, for example, you use a small amount of the original work, you're not using the whole thing, just 5, 10, 15 seconds at a time. If you use the work for educational purposes, which I don't know in the case of YouTube if that's accurate or not, using the work to add new meaning or expression to the original, I definitely think there's something to that, right? Like you're not making this video to just repeat what happened. You're trying to add new meaning or some new explanation to it, or using factual instead of fictional work. Well, yeah, sports games they're all factional. This is not fictional like WWE. Oh, I said it. Anyway, bottom line, a lot of people think that fair use could be applied to sports highlights and using them here on YouTube. But again, YouTube kind of has the first, last, and only say on this. If they're going to ban your videos or demonetize your videos, there's not much you can do besides put up a fight and maybe have success, but likely not. So here's my advice for content creators. Number one, you might be in the right of all this, whether it's the definition of fair use or why you're using this or how you're using this. You might be doing everything T's crossed, I's dotted, as legal as can be. But, like I said before, think about this. Is it really worth the fight just to spice up your videos? Think creatively. How else can you tell stories? Look, that's why I use so many keynote presentations and still images. And I love the telestrator. You know why? Because it's a still image that I'm telestrating. That's not breaking any copyright laws. Not using any video or sound or audio. Sometimes it catches the audio of a clip. So that's what I've had to do. I've had to pivot and think creatively. How else can I get across these visuals without using copyrighted video? Because the bigger you get, whether it's your channel, your following, your platform, your views, whatever, the bigger you get, the more radars you're going to be on. Your small channel, yeah, you might get away with it for a while. They don't have their eyes on you yet, but they will. And again, from their viewpoint, they're just doing what they think is totally legal. They own the copyright to the footage. They pay a lot of money for the games to happen, for the players to be paid, for the broadcast to take place, for transmission, for all that stuff. Why would you let somebody steal the last mile? That's their view. And so if you're a creator, protect your catalog, right? Don't have a bunch of videos with a bunch of copyrighted footage and you think, well, this will never get seen and nobody will ever go back on it. Oh no, they might. They might. Protect your catalog. Find another way. There are many successful YouTube channels that don't use footage. And that just might be the way you have to go if you really want to play this smart and protect yourself. So those are my thoughts on copyrighted sports videos. Again, I'm trying to see all sides here, and I don't think that it's great. It's not perfect. In an optimal world, you could just use an understood amount, right? Like I don't want to see somebody abuse the system and put out whole games worth of videos and then the leagues lose out. But if you use a couple minutes worth, and you're talking over it, and you're pointing things out, if you're adding something to the conversation by using the video, really what's wrong with that? It's a modified form of what you were going to get from the respective league anyway. But I think that's an optimal world, and I just don't know that it's going to happen. That's kind of middle ground. I think we're either going to get one side of this or the other side of this. I don't know that we'll ever reach that middle ground. That's the end of this video. Thumbs up down below. That will greatly help me and this video and this channel. One more thing while you're down there, make sure you've already hit that subscribe button. That way I can definitely see you back here next time.